The steak was still sizzling, just taken off the pan, juicy, seasoned with garlic and rosemary. The kind of meal that makes a kitchen feel warm and cozy. And 10-year-old Madhu sat at the dining table with a full plate in front of him. Steak, roasted potatoes, fresh green beans, a tall glass of cold orange juice, and a cloth napkin folded neatly beside his fork. 3 feet away on the kitchen floor, 10-year-old Zabari sat cross-legged on the cold tile, a paper plate in his lap. On it, the fat Madhu had cut off his steak, a plain piece of bread with nothing on it, and a cup of tap water sitting on the floor beside him. The woman who placed those plates down, one on the table, one on the floor, stood at the counter and sipped her wine. She didn't look at the boy on the floor. She never did. But she should have. Because in 19 days, a man was going to walk into the most important night of her life. He was going to carry a file that hadn't been opened in 3 years. And when he placed it on that podium, every camera in the room would capture the exact moment her face fell apart. If you believe that fate always finds the ones who starve the innocent to feed their own greed, subscribe right now and hit that bell. Because what happens in this story, you will never forget. Nobody in Chicago would have believed it. Not the donors, not the board members, not the journalists who wrote wonderful stories about her in the Tribune. Because from the outside, Enichi Adami looked like everything a good person was supposed to be. She hosted charity brunches at her penthouse on Lakeshore Drive. She sat on 3 nonprofit boards. She spoke at churches, community centers, and fundraising dinners with a voice so warm and sincere that strangers would reach for their checkbooks. And 3 years ago, she did the thing that made everyone think she was untouchable. She adopted an orphan. The cameras loved it. A beautiful woman in a cream-colored suit walking out of Cook County Family Court, holding the hand of a small boy in a new jacket. Camera flashes popping. Reporters calling her name. The headline ran that evening on every local news channel. Chicago philanthropist gives orphan a second chance. She gave interviews and sat on morning show couches with Zubri beside her, his small body stiff, his eyes wide, his hand gripping hers because the cameras were loud and he didn't understand why so many people were looking at him. Every child deserves love, Enichi said, smiling at the camera, her hand resting on Zubri's shoulder. Every child deserves a home. And this little boy, he's my son now. He will never be alone again. The audience clapped. The host wiped her eyes. The donations poured in. And then the cameras turned off and the front door closed. And everything changed. The penthouse on Lakeshore Drive had 4 bedrooms. Madhu's room had a queen-size bed with a navy blue comforter, a flat-screen television on the wall, a shelf full of video games, and a window overlooking the lake. Sunlight poured in every morning and landed right on his pillow. Zabari's room was not a room. It was a utility closet off the kitchen. Narrow, no window, a bare light bulb overhead that buzzed when it was on, a folded blanket on the cold tile floor. His clothes hung on a wire rack beside the water heater, and the air smelled like cleaning supplies and dust. Every night, Madhu climbed into his warm bed, and every night, Zabari lay on the tile floor and stared at the buzzing bulb until his eyes closed. This is where you sleep? Enichi had told him the first week, and you should be grateful. Before me, you had nothing. Yes, ma'am. If anyone asks, you have your own room. You understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now go clean the kitchen. Zabari cleaned. He scrubbed the bathrooms. He folded the laundry. He mopped the floors. He washed the dishes after every meal. Meals he was not allowed to eat at the table. Meals where he sat on the floor and ate whatever Madhu left behind. And every single morning, Enichi packed Madhu's lunch in a nice insulated bag. A turkey sandwich on whole wheat bread, apple slices, a juice box, a granola bar, and a handwritten note tucked inside that said something like, "Have a great day, my king." Zubri got an empty lunchbox. If your teacher asks, what do you say? I ate a big breakfast. And if anyone asks about home, I say everything is great. That's my good boy. She said it the same way someone says good dog. And she didn't even notice. Something was about to change. And it would start with the quietest man in the building. Mr. Okanjo had mopped the floors of Lakewood Elementary for 11 years. He knew every hallway, every classroom, every crack, and every tile. He arrived before the first bell and left after the last light went off. Most people walked past him like he was just part of the building, no different from a wall or a water fountain. He didn't mind. He wasn't there to be noticed. He was there to watch. And he had been watching Zubri for 2 months. It started small. The boy never ate lunch. He sat in the cafeteria with his empty lunchbox open, pretending to sort through it, pretending he had already eaten, pretending he wasn't hungry. But Mr. Okanjo saw his hand shaking. He saw the way the boy's eyes followed other kids' food trays like a dog tracking a bone. Then the weight loss. Zubri's uniform hung off him. His pants were held up with a safety pin at the waist. His cheekbones were sharp. His wrists looked like they could snap. Then the bruises. One afternoon, Zabari was washing his hands in the boys' bathroom. His sleeve slid up. Mr. Okanjo was refilling the soap dispenser 2 feet away. He saw them. 5 dark oval marks on the boy's upper arm. Purple, finger-shaped, unmistakable. Zabari saw him looking and yanked his sleeve down fast. It's nothing. I fell. Mr. Okanjo didn't say a word. But that night, he sat at his kitchen table with a spiral notebook and a pen. He opened it to the first page and wrote, date, time, what he saw. Bruises on the left upper arm, oval-shaped, consistent with grabbing. Student claims he fell. He closed the notebook, placed the pen on top, and stared at it for a long time. What are you doing, Papa? His wife appeared in the doorway. Something I should have started doing weeks ago. The next day, Mr. Okanjo found Zubri alone in an empty classroom during lunch. The boy was sitting at a desk, staring at the wall, not reading, not drawing, just sitting the way people sit when they've stopped expecting anything to change. Mr. Okanjo pulled a chair to the desk across from him. He opened his own lunch bag and took out a sandwich. Peanut butter and jelly on white bread. His wife made the same thing every day. 30 years of the same sandwich. He loved her for it. He slid the sandwich across the desk. Eat! Zubri looked at him, then at the sandwich, then back at him. I'm not hungry. I ate a big. Mr. Okanjo's voice was gentle, but it left no room. Eat! Zubri picked up the sandwich. He took a bite, then another, then another. He ate so fast he almost choked. His eyes got wet, but he blinked hard and kept chewing. Mr. Okanjo watched, and his chest ached with a pain he couldn't name. From that day on, every lunch period, Mr. Okanjo brought 2 sandwiches, one for him, one for Zubri. They ate together in that empty classroom. They didn't talk much at first, just ate, and the silence between them was comfortable, safe, the kind of silence that says, I'm here, I'm not leaving. But eventually, Zubri started talking. Mr. Okanjo, yes, son. Do you think some people are born to be small? What do you mean? Like, some people are supposed to be big, have big rooms and big plates and big lives. And some people are supposed to be small, eat small, sleep small, be small. Mr. Okanjo set his sandwich down. He looked at this boy, 10 years old, thin as paper, wearing clothes 2 sizes too big, asking if the universe had made him worthless. No, nobody is born to be small. Some people try to make you small because they're afraid of how big you're supposed to be. Zabari looked at him. Something flickered in his eyes, a tiny flame, almost invisible, but it was there. And there was another pair of eyes watching Zubri. And they belonged to someone who wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. Ms. Abi was 27, in her 3rd year of teaching 5th grade at Lakewood Elementary. She became a teacher because a teacher once saved her life, pulled her out of a bad situation at home when she was 12, and made sure she ended up somewhere safe. She never forgot it. She promised herself she would do the same thing for every child who needed it. And Zubri needed it. She noticed the same things Mr. Okanjo did. The weight loss, the exhaustion, the way Zabari fell asleep in class almost every afternoon, his head on his arms, his body giving out. The same clothes 3 days in a row, thin, worn, and too small, nothing like Madhu's crisp uniform and designer sneakers. She called Enichi in for a parent-teacher conference, and Enichi arrived in a camel-colored cashmere coat, full makeup, and diamond stud earrings. She smelled like expensive perfume. She sat across from Ms. Aabi with her legs crossed and her hands folded, and a smile so perfect it looked practiced. Because it was, Zubri has been falling asleep in class, Ms. Abi said. He's lost weight. His grades have dropped a lot, and I've noticed some marks on his arms. Marks? Enichi tilted her head with a look of practiced concern. He's an active boy. He plays rough. These marks are on his upper arms. They look like... Enichi leaned forward. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes did. They went flat and cold. Zubri came from the foster system. He carries deep pain. We are working with a therapist. He is making progress every day. I appreciate your concern, but I assure you my son is deeply loved. She said, my son, the way someone stamps a label on a package. Ownership, not love. Ms. Abi nodded politely, but she didn't believe a single word. That evening, she sat at her desk after the last student left. She opened a folder and began writing her own records, dates, observations, quotes, everything she had noticed over the past 3 months. She didn't know that 2 floors below her, in the janitor's closet, Mr. Okanjo was doing the exact same thing. They ran into each other in the hallway on a Thursday afternoon. Ms. Abi was carrying her folder. Mr. Okanjo was carrying his notebook. They stopped, looked at each other, and something passed between them. Recognition. You see it too, she said. He nodded slowly. 3 months of notes. So do I. What do we do with them? Ms. Abi pressed the folder against her chest. I don't know yet, but we can't leave that boy in that house. No, we cannot. If you're watching this right now and your chest is getting tight, if you're starting to feel something rise up that won't sit back down, then you are exactly the kind of person who belongs here. Stay with me, because what they find out next about this boy is going to change everything. There was a man in Chicago who had been searching for 3 years, and he was about to find what he was looking for. Judge Chukwumeka Nosu, retired, 71 years old, former Cook County Family Court judge, 32 years on the bench. He had seen every kind of case, every kind of cruelty, every kind of miracle, and he had learned that the law could protect people, but only if someone cared enough to use it. And he cared because he had made a promise to a dying man. Solomon Okoro had been his closest friend for 46 years. They met in 1972 at a bus stop on the South Side. 2 young men from West Africa, both new to Chicago, both broke, both burning with the kind of big dreams that don't ask permission. Solomon started a cleaning company. 1 van, 3 workers, night shifts cleaning office buildings while the rest of the city slept. He worked 18-hour days. He charged less than every competitor. He delivered quality that nobody expected from a one-man operation. By 1985, Okoro Facilities Management had 40 employees and contracts all across Cook County. By 1995, they managed maintenance for over 100 commercial properties. By 2005, the company was the largest black-owned facilities management firm in the Midwest. Solomon built an empire with a mop and a handshake, and he never forgot where he came from. His only son, David, married a woman named Amina. They had 1 child, Zubri, born on a Tuesday morning at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Solomon held the baby before anyone else. This boy will carry the name forward, Solomon said, his voice thick with emotion. Everything I built was for this moment. But fate had other plans. Amina died from problems during childbirth. David, broken by grief, drove home from the hospital in a daze. He ran a red light at an intersection on Halstead Street. A delivery truck hit the driver's side at 40 miles per hour. David died on impact. Zubri was 4 months old, and with both parents gone and no close family stepping forward, Amina had no known relatives in the U.S., and Solomon's contact information was buried in paperwork. Zubri was placed into the foster care system. Solomon didn't find out for 2 years. By the time he learned his grandson was alive and in state custody, he was already sick. Prostate cancer, advanced, spreading fast. He spent his final 2 years searching, hired investigators, filed petitions, fought through the maze of the foster system. A system designed to protect children, but built like a maze that sometimes swallows them instead. He never found Zubri. But 3 weeks before he died, Solomon called Judge Nosu to his bedside. The room was dim. Machines hummed. Solomon's hands were thin and shaking, but his grip was still strong. and he pressed the sealed file into the judge's hands. Everything is in here. The trust documents, the will, the company plan, every dollar, every property, every contract. It all goes to Zubri. He is the only heir. I'll find him, Solomon. I swear to you. I know you will. Solomon's eyes glistened. But when you do, don't just give him money. Give him the truth. Tell him who his grandfather was. Tell him, I built this with my bare hands. And tell him, his voice broke. Tell him I never stopped looking. Not for one single day. Judge Nosa locked that file in his office safe, and for 3 years he searched. The break came on a Tuesday morning. Judge Nosa's investigator flagged an adoption record. A 10-year-old boy named Zubri, adopted out of Cook County foster care 3 years ago, and the adoptive mother, Enichi Adami. The judge recognized the name. Her late husband had worked at Okoro Facilities Management as a mid-level manager. After his death, Enichi had somehow gotten herself onto the company's board. She had taken control of the company through a series of legal moves that Judge Nosu was now looking at with very different eyes. He pulled the adoption records, cross-referenced the biological parents, David Okoro, Amina Okoro, and checked the child's birth certificate. It was him, Solomon's grandson, found, but something was wrong. The school record showed falling grades. Nurse reports showed unexplained weight loss. And a janitor at Lakewood Elementary had filed a formal complaint about a child named Zubri. Bruises, neglect, signs of abuse. Judge Nosu picked up the phone. Mr. Okanjo, my name is Judge Chukwemeka Nosu. I'm calling about a boy in your school. A boy named Zubri. Silence on the line. I believe you've been keeping a record of what you've seen. How do you know that? Because his grandfather asked me to find him, and I believe you've been protecting him until I did. Mr. Okanjo's breath caught. His grandfather? Solomon Okoro. The silence that followed was the kind that changes the shape of everything after it. Oh my God, Mr. Okanjo whispered. I worked for Solomon 41 years ago. He gave me my first job in this country. I cleaned the floors of his first office building. Then you understand what I'm about to tell you. Zubri is Solomon's sole heir. The Okoro estate is worth $85 million. And the woman who adopted him, she adopted him because she knew who he was. She adopted him to control the inheritance, to keep him small, to keep him silent, to keep him in her pocket while she ran his grandfather's company as if it were her own. Mr. Okanjo's hand was shaking so hard the phone rattled against his ear. Every night, Mr. Okanjo said, his voice trembling, that boy goes home to a woman who feeds him scraps while her own son eats like a king. He sleeps in a closet. He comes to school in clothes that don't fit. And his arms, he stopped swallowed. His arms have bruises the shape of her fingers. I need your records, Mr. Okanjo. Everything you have. I have 3 months, every date, every detail. And there's a teacher, Ms. Aabi. She has her own records too. Get them to me, both sets, this week. And then what? Judge Nosa looked at the sealed file on his desk. The file Solomon had pressed into his hands 3 years ago with shaking fingers and desperate eyes. Then I opened the file. The Drake Hotel ballroom was golden. 300 guests, crystal chandeliers dripping with light, round tables covered in white linen, a string quartet playing softly near the bar, waiters in black vests carrying trays of champagne. This was Enichi's night, her annual charity gala, second chances, an evening for foster children. The biggest fundraising event of the year. Press, photographers, and donors who wrote six-figure checks. Enichi stood at the podium in an ivory gown. Her hair was swept up. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked like a queen. Zubri sat at the front table in a new suit she had bought him that morning. The one night a year she dressed him well. The one night the prop had to look polished. Every child deserves a second chance, Enichi said into the microphone. Her voice was smooth as silk. 3 years ago, I met a boy who had no one, no parents, no family, no hope, and I made a choice. I chose love. The audience murmured with approval. Someone in the back wiped their eyes. Tonight, I ask you to make that same choice. Open your hearts. Open your wallets. Because somewhere in this city, there is another child waiting. Another child who, The ballroom doors opened. Not loudly, not dramatically. They just opened, and 3 people walked in. Judge Chukwumeka Nosu, 71 years old, gray 3-piece suit, leather briefcase, reading glasses folded in his breast pocket. His posture was straight as a column, and his face was carved from stone. Beside him, a woman in a navy blazer, Child Protective Services. Behind them, a man in a dark suit, the attorney for the Okoro Family Trust. They walked down the center aisle between the tables. Every head turned. Enichi stopped speaking. Her mouth stayed open. The microphone caught her breathing, sharp, fast, the sound of someone whose chest had just tightened. Judge Nosu walked to the front of the room. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't introduce himself to Enichi. He placed his briefcase on the edge of the podium, opened it, and removed a thick file, old worn, sealed with a red wax stamp that he broke with his thumb. He opened the file and placed it beside her on the podium. Mrs. Adami. His voice filled the room without a microphone. Deep, steady, the voice of a man who had delivered verdicts for 32 years. My name is Judge Chukwumeka Nosu. I am here on behalf of the Okoro Family Trust and the estate of Solomon Okoro. Enichi's hand gripped the podium. Her knuckles went pale. The child seated at that table, he pointed at Zubri without looking away from Enichi, is the sole biological heir to the Okoro estate, an estate currently valued at $85 million. A gasp rippled through the room. 300 people inhaled at the same time. An estate that you, Mrs. Adami, have been illegally running. An estate you're controlled by keeping its rightful owner, a 10-year-old child, starved, neglected, and locked in a utility closet in a penthouse that belongs to him. Enichi's mouth moved. No sound came out. I have in my possession 4 months of documented evidence, put together independently by 2 witnesses at a school, detailing ongoing physical and emotional abuse, photographs of bruises, records of weight loss, and testimony that this child has been forced to eat scraps on the kitchen floor while your biological son ate full meals at the same table. The photographer in the front row raised his camera. The flash went off, then another, then 6 more. The room exploded with the sound of clicking shutters. This file, Judge Nosu placed his hand flat on the open documents, was sealed by Solomon Okoro himself. 3 weeks before he died, he gave it to me with one instruction: find his grandson and give him what belongs to him. He turned to face the room. Mrs. Adami did not adopt this child out of love. She adopted him because she knew who he was. She knew he was the sole heir. And she calculated correctly that if she kept him small, kept him hungry, kept him invisible, she could control an $85 million estate forever. He turned back to Enichi. This file is now open. A criminal investigation has been started. Child Protective Services is here to make sure Zubri is immediately safe. And effective this moment, your access to all Okoro Trust assets, accounts, and properties is terminated. Enichi's legs buckled. She grabbed the podium with both hands to keep from falling. Her microphone was still live. 300 people heard her gasp. The photographer captured the exact moment her face fell apart. Mouth open, eyes wide, the golden mask shattering into 1,000 pieces on the floor of her own charity gala. And the woman who stood on stages and gave speeches about loving every child was destroyed on a stage in front of every person she had ever tricked. Judge Nosu turned and walked to the front table. Zubri was sitting alone, his small hands flat on the white tablecloth. His eyes were wide. He didn't understand what had just happened. Then he saw someone else walking toward him from the back of the room. Slow, steady, holding a mop handle like a walking stick. Mr. Okanjo. He was wearing his janitor's uniform. He hadn't had time to change. He had driven straight from the school to the Drake Hotel with Ms. Aabi, who stood near the doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Okanjo stopped in front of Zubri. He set the mop against the table, and he knelt down slowly, his old knees protesting, but he knelt. He took both of Zabari's small hands in his. Mr. Okanjo. Zabari's voice was barely a whisper. What's happening? Something that should have happened a long time ago. I don't understand. Mr. Okanjo's eyes filled with tears. His chin trembled, but his hands were steady around the boys. Your grandfather was the man who gave me my first job in this country 41 years ago. I was 22, just arrived from Lagos. Couldn't find work anywhere. Every door closed. Every face turned away. And one man, opened a door, handed me a mop and said, "You work hard. I'll pay you fair." That's the deal. That man was Solomon Okoro. Zubri stared at him. My grandfather. He built one of the biggest companies in this city with his bare hands, with a mop just like this one. Mr. Okanjo glanced at the mop against the table. And everything he built, every building, every contract, every dollar, he built for you. For me? For you? Mr. Okanjo squeezed his hands. And I didn't know you were his grandson when I gave you that first sandwich. I just saw a hungry boy. But when I found out who you were, his voice broke. I made a promise to his memory. Nobody was going to hurt Solomon Okoro's grandson, not while I was still breathing. Zabari's face crumbled. He fell forward into Mr. Okanjo's chest and cried. Deep, shaking, heaving sobs that echoed to the silent ballroom. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep it doesn't have a name. The sound of a boy who had been told he was nothing, discovering he was everything. Mr. Okanjo held him, wrapped both arms around him, and pressed his cheek against the top of the boy's head. "You are not small," Mr. Okanjo whispered. "You were never small. You are the biggest thing in this room." Ms. Abi crossed the ballroom floor and knelt beside them both. She put one hand on Zabari's back. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She was there. That was enough. Judge Nosu stood behind them. He reached into his briefcase one final time. He pulled out a photograph, old, slightly faded at the edges. A man with kind eyes, strong hands, and a face full of warmth and stubborn hope. He waited until Zubri's crying softened. Then he knelt too, all three of them on the floor of a ballroom that cost $15,000 to rent for the evening. "Zubri, this is your grandfather, Solomon Okoro." Zubri took the photograph with both hands. He stared at it. His thumbs traced the edges. "He looks kind." He was the kindest man I ever knew, and the strongest. And he spent the last 2 years of his life looking for you. He never found you, but he never stopped, not for one single day. Zubri held the photograph against his chest, the same way he had held that sandwich the first time Mr. Okanjo slid across the desk, like it was the most precious thing in the world. He was looking for me? Every single day, son. Every single day. Enichi was arrested at the gala, handcuffed in an ivory gown in front of 300 people and 11 cameras. She was charged with financial exploitation of a minor, fraud, theft, and child neglect. Her assets were frozen. Her board position was taken away. The adoption was reviewed and ultimately reversed. And her biological son, Madhu, was placed with an aunt on his father's side. He wasn't a villain. He was a boy who had been taught cruelty by a woman who practiced it like a profession. He would need years to unlearn what she had built into him. But he was young enough. There was still time. The penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, the one Enichi had decorated with Okoro Company money, the one where she sipped wine at a dining table while a child ate scraps on the floor, belonged to the trust. It had always belonged to the trust. Her name was never on the deed. Zubri ate dinner at a real table that night. A full plate, warm food, a chair at the head of the table in a home that had always been his. Mr. Okanjo was offered a position as head of facilities at Okoro Facilities Management, a full circle, back to the company where it started as a night janitor 41 years ago. He stood in the same building where he had once mopped floors at 2 o'clock in the morning and looked at the nameplate on his new office door. His eyes went blurry. He touched the letters with his fingertips. "We came a long way, Solomon," he whispered to the empty room. "We came a long way." Ms. Abi received a full education grant funded by the Okoro Family Trust, a program set up in Solomon's name for teachers who go above and beyond their job to protect the children who need it most. Judge Nosu visited the penthouse one last time. He sat across from Zubri at the dining table, the same table where Madhu once ate steak, while Zubri sat on the floor, the same table that now belonged to its rightful owner. He slid the photograph of Solomon across the table one more time. "Keep this somewhere you can see it every morning." "I will." And Zubri, Yes, sir. Your grandfather once told me, a man who starts with a mop and ends with an empire has only one secret. He never believed the world when it told him he was small. The judge leaned forward. The world tried to make you small. A woman tried to make you small. But here you are, sitting at the head of a table in a home your grandfather built with his bare hands. You were never small. Son, you were just waiting to be found. Zubri looked at the photograph, then around the room, then at his hands. The same hands that had scrubbed floors and washed dishes and held scraps on a paper plate. And the same hands that now owned everything in every direction he looked. I'm not small, he said quietly. Then louder, I'm not small. And for the first time in 3 years, he smiled. You know, she stood on that stage in an ivory gown and told 300 people she chose love. She held a microphone and spoke about giving children second chances. She collected donations in the name of orphans while her own orphans slept in a closet. But fate was in that ballroom too. Fate had been watching for 3 years. Watching from a janitor's closet, from a teacher's desk, from a judge's safe. Fate was patient. Fate was precise. And when it finally moved, it didn't just open a file. It opened the truth. And the truth filled that room like a flood. If this story left something burning in your chest, if you felt that fire rise and it refused to go back down, then you belong here. Subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Because on this channel, the greedy always fall, the overlooked always rise, and the ones who try to keep you small, they always end up standing in the wreckage of the very stage they built for themselves.